There you are.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Good, and you?
Good.
Are we working?
I believe, well, it shows that it's recording. I don't actually see your video, though.
Let's see.
There you go.
There we go.
All right.
So are you over the eclipse now in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, I think so. I think everyone's tweeted about it and posted and all sorts of things. I saw a great tweet from an area superintendent yesterday that said something about for sale, 700 slightly used eclipse glasses.
I heard somebody who's gathering them to send them to Africa, where the next one is supposed to happen, but I haven't heard who that is. We have a bunch.
That would be interesting. That would be interesting. So, because there were definitely a lot of them made. So,
yes. Well, at least you got the totality piece of it. That's pretty cool.
It was pretty cool. Yeah. I mean, it was a lot of fun. We have some great pictures, you know, when you can see, you know, all the kids just gazing up at the eye, you know, up at the sky, and
yeah, that's very cool.
It was cool. So yeah, it was a good day for everyone, and no one. We didn't, you know, of course, you always worry about safety and things like that. But you know, I mean, we had a team that had really put together a nice day, and our kids really handled it well. So that was nice.
Nobody blinded themselves.
Not a one. Although someone had shared an article with me that there was, I guess nationally, I don't know what database they look at, but there was an uptick in emergency room visits.
Oh, really?
And they said they were actually more like, it was like physical injuries, like people were wearing the glasses and fell down, or were driving and trying to look at the eclipse and getting into car accidents.
That's insane.
Yeah, just all sorts of crazy things, but versus their eyes, actually.
I spent the day with 90 kids with behavior disorders, and they did fine. So.
Yep, absolutely. Well, very good. That's great.
So it looks like we have to start by introducing ourselves.
Okay.
And our career positions and career aspirations.
And our career aspirations, I guess. All right. You want to go first?
Sure. So I'm Scott Butler. I am currently the director of a couple of different programs at Boys Town in Omaha. I finished my doctorate in 2010, but came back to pick up my superintendency certificate. So
excellent.
Yeah. What do
you want to do with your life, Scott?
I don't want to be a superintendent in a major, huge school district, but I wouldn't mind something small.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very good.
Yeah, not OPS.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the areas to definitely, I think, probably steer clear. So.
Yeah. So how about you?
Jeremy Christensen. I'm an elementary principal and student services director in Fairbury, Nebraska. Fairbury is a town of about just under 4,000 people, so we have about 950 kids, pre-K-12. And so I've been here, this is actually my 17th year here in Fairbury. I started out teaching in OPS and was there for 7 years. And then this is my first principal gig. I've actually been in two different buildings. We have two elementary schools. And so I was at the first elementary school, which was preschool through second grade for 13 years. And then the other building was 3 through 6, and they had quite a bit of turnover and some turmoil and those sorts of things. And I felt I had a couple of opportunities to make a change, but didn't feel it was the right time for the building I was at and myself. But But now this will be my 4th year in the intermediate building. So
Fairbury's home. You've been there a long time.
Absolutely. You know, it really has been. And that's one of the things. So then is I think about career aspirations, you know, it's like, you know, I don't see myself being here forever. You know, our kids are now raised and grown and off to, you know, college and professional school and that sort of thing. And so, you know, they're not coming back. And, you know, maybe one of those things where it's kind of like, yeah, I see myself probably leaving, but that's also a really hard thing to do because we have some great relationships and really close friends, and this is home, you know, so it's kind of like, I don't know about that. So anyway, career aspiration, I do see, I do want to look at some possible roles in superintendency. Again, not necessarily of a very, you know, like a large school district, other than I do have kind of I think there's a part of me that would be interested in exploring maybe like an associate superintendent role, like human resources or, you know, staff development, something like that. Because I definitely have kind of a real interest in that area in terms of working with adults. But I see myself probably doing, you know, kind of a mid-sized school. I don't know, like a C2, C1, you know, something like that. Maybe looking for a role in that size of school. So.
That's a nice size school.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Okay, so we're to interview or just basically ask each other what it seems like is defining the following terms. So there's 5 terms and coming up with just kind of, I think, just our kind of thoughts or kind of definitions of what comes to mind when we think of each of those.
Yeah,
so,
that's the way I understand.
So let's start with school effectiveness. I guess I'll just start. When I look at that compared to the other 5 terms, right away I think of school effectiveness as really being sort of the successful implementation of a school's mission. That, you know, we're all about teaching and learning, helping kids become, you know, achieve their potential, and that we're successful in doing that.
Yep, I agree. That word effectiveness seems to imply results, something tangible, something that can be measurable, something that's a success.
Yep.
And I think in recent years that I've been challenged a little bit on that, to think of that beyond just being a good school for kids, but also effectiveness for the adults who come to the building every day too.
Yeah.
So would your teachers say that it's a good place that they want to be, that they want to come and participate? So I think there's some pieces there for adults as well.
Absolutely. And even beyond teachers, you know, whether it's any staff or whether it's the parents, you know, community members, what does your community feel about your school and their, you know, and I guess your school's accomplishment and of its mission and its place. Excellent.
Yep, my girls were at a large. They go to a large suburban high school here in Omaha, and football guys today, pep rally, inappropriate shirts. There's a real discussion of some effectiveness going on on social media tonight.
I think it's Well, what it has done is it has highlighted all of the opportunities for growth that they have.
That's right.
They have lots to do this year, so
that's right.
That's good. All right.
Let's go on. School reform. I think that word reform especially seems to me to say that there's some element of restructuring, rethinking, reorganization, reprogramming, repurposing around things. So when I think of reform, I think of things that we're intentionally trying to change and be different with. Yeah,
I agree. Right away. I mean, one of the first things I thought about was kind of the whole realm of looking at change itself, and that it was, and in many ways, it's looking at is reform, whether that is in structural, like organizational reform. But also it could be, you know, instructional, you know, the thing. So looking at it in a kind of those different ways. And the other thing I kept thinking about was, you know, in a lot of the classes that because I know you've been in several of the same classes that I have over the last, couple semesters, is that whole idea that the other thing that I kept thinking about when I think of reform was the word stall, and that it tends to be due to resistance of adults in those settings, and whether that's teachers or staff members or even communities. I mean, I see that, I've experienced that here, that sometimes reform is not something a community wants necessarily, or parents seem to want. But it seems that there's that, due to that natural resistance, that reform tends to be pretty darn slow.
And sometimes it's forced on us by things beyond our control. I don't know how the legislature is impacting you with funding and things like that. I'm in a private school, so I'm kind of exempt from that. I generate my own income, but our local school district took a pretty big hit this year, and they're going to have to make some significant reform efforts based on that.
Absolutely. And I mean, unless, it's tough. I mean, our school district, again, we're primarily ag-based, land-based, and there for a while we would fluctuate hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of state aid every year, and it was really unpredictable. And then within the last 2 years, we completely went to zero state aid, and we're just non-equalized.
Yeah.
And then you kind of get used to that, and you're trying to, okay, we're going to balance this and cut here and trim here, or do whatever you need to do and prioritize. And then like this year, I think, they must have decided to throw us a pittance of, like $75,000 or something, in state aid. It's like, why bother at this point,
Yeah, and the changes make it really difficult, and oftentimes they're unpredictable. So
yeah, very unpredictable. So yeah, absolutely. So the next one, school improvement, which is such a broad term, but very honestly, Scott, I think a lot of times I really try and center that on the concept of continuous.
Yeah.
In when I'm looking at how it compares to the other terms. And you probably are familiar with or heard of Mike Schmoker and his book Results. And I think it's really interesting too, because one of the things, I actually have a quote of his that talks a lot about that the importance of that continual focus on improvement, and just boiling it down to when adults set goals, and when adults collaborate together around a common purpose or a common issue or a common problem, and then monitor their progress and see how are we doing, and reflect on that's when we make the greatest progress. Yeah. So
darn right. I think it's continual. If we're not continually looking at how we can get better, we're not growing.
Yep, absolutely.
I'm with you. I think that has to be ongoing, and it has to be intentionally visited, like you said. And I think Schmoker's really good about that. Periodically, you just have to look at where things are, take a really good hard look at them, and set some goals.
Mm-hmm.
When I think of turnaround, our next term, I don't think of a lot of schools in Nebraska, but to me, a turnaround is when you've gone down the wrong path, or you're getting the wrong results, and you have to intentionally try to make a U-turn and head in a different direction.
Yeah.
So we hear about schools that have done that, but I don't think it's a real common thing in Nebraska.
No. There for a while with some of the persistently low achieving schools, with No Child Behind and some of those things, schools were getting to, the point of year 3 or year 4 of being in need of improvement, and, having to face some of those kind of challenges of, okay, so one of the requirements is we've got to replace the principal, or we've got to replace, how else to completely change a curriculum process or an instructional process. So again, I thought the same thing, holistic kind of comprehensive change, but it is interesting. We don't see a lot of that happening in this area, but when you talk to people from other states, it seems a little more common.
Yeah.
Maybe more urban settings.
Yeah.
I think that, what was it? The state board, I saw they had, not too long ago, they had put out an announcement that was at one of their schools. I'm trying to think if it was Miller Park or one of those had been taken off of the needs improvement list, the bottom 3.
Yeah.
And again, it was a turnaround school in terms of they had replaced 50% of the staff, the leadership, completely, increased instructional time and those sorts of things. But again, really kind of forced upon those. I guess one of the things I've always been kind of curious about is the longevity of success in turnaround schools and what kind of studies have been done on those over the last, 10 or 15 years. And, if that leader leaves, have they been able to maintain or sustain that growth?
Yeah, a lot of those turnarounds, you do hear about them from a person perspective, don't you? It's this person came in and made it happen, not the staff, not the community. The story tends to be about a person. So that does bring up the issue of sustainability. I don't know what the answer to that is.
What's the next one?
Innovation. Thinking outside the box. I worked with, I was in a school a couple of years ago, and innovation was a word that they collaboratively decided we were going to value. Our teachers really liked that word. So as we explored it, it was interesting because I think people think innovation means you're on the cutting edge, but being there can be really an uncomfortable place to be. We found a lot of people who wanted to do the same thing over and over again, or that, there's innovation and then there's innovation at all costs. And it was a fine line that as a staff we had to travel because there were pros and cons to it.
I think it's interesting you mentioned can be uncomfortable being, kind of on that edge of innovation, or we may not want to do that. And, I think sometimes with staff that I've worked with where maybe they truly do have an innovative approach or idea they want to try, so often, and I think it's just so many of us, it's human nature, we're afraid to fail.
Yeah.
We don't want to look bad. We've been pretty successful in what we've done and so forth. And how do we as leaders kind of support that and really convince them that, no, it's okay to take that risk. But I'm trying to think where I was. It wasn't that long ago, but there was some discussion, and I'm trying to think if West Side Schools was there and something else, but they were talking about, they sort of have this real embrace of innovation. And their approach was, certainly at the classroom teacher level, or any level. I mean, at the ground level, I guess I want to say. So, a custodian or a paraeducator or a, cafeteria, worker might have, they've identified a problem, or they've identified a problem of practice in their area, and they want to maybe propose an innovative approach to that, or, that sort of thing. And they have a process of how to do that. And sometimes there's different levels, like there's some innovations that don't cost any money.
Yeah.
It's just more of a change in approach or policy or practice, and others obviously might take a lot more resources. But an interesting approach to that, thinking about innovation as coming out of your daily practice and what you recognize as we want to try something different.
And I think over the years, I go back, I'm in year 29, almost 30. We didn't have state standards when I started teaching.
Yeah.
So we had a lot more freedom, I think, to think that way.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure that everybody in our classrooms today has that same sense of freedom to do some of that. I think we may have lost a little of that along the way.
I would agree. I think in a lot of our approaches, whether we're trying to have a guaranteed viable curriculum, or we're trying to, have an improvement strategy that's, more universal, or whatever it might be. But it's interesting because had a conversation actually with a secondary teacher just this week, and there was kind of that sense of she finally kind of came out and said it about, she goes, I don't know if this is the right word, but she said, I just feel like I'm constantly being like micromanaged.
Yeah.
And she said, and it's not really that, but yet it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, I get that. I do.
I get that too.
Yeah.
The pendulum will swing a little bit on that again. I think
Mm-hmm.
it will find its way back again.
Yeah, I think so too.
So which of these words resonates the most with you?
I would say I had the two that jumped out that I think are very interconnected are 1 and 3, school effectiveness and school improvement.
That's where I would go to.
Right away I thought, that's, to me, that's the goal that that I want to strive toward is that continuous improvement. And one of the things that, I've seen in practice that really makes a difference, even at the simplest level of just working one-on-one with kids or in a classroom of kids, is that, let's not keep the target a secret. We need to talk about it, and we need to put it out there. And when we do, guess what happens 99% of the time is we improve.
Yeah, in all of our targets, not just academically.
Absolutely.
Behavioral targets and performance targets, all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see those two as both more results oriented, where the others are other processes that lead to effectiveness and improvement.
I think so too. Awesome.
Okay.
Well, I think that's about it for this task. And then from what I've kind of seen on the discussion post is that this is being recorded, and I see the recording button, and then it sounds like Dr. Zuckerman she does the post.
Okay.
Later. So I think it gets wherever it ends up, and then she posts it, and then we're just going to watch some others and make some sort of comments. So
okay.
I have to see. I haven't looked at your intro video, but I have to comment. I got a chuckle out of your little blurb intro. I thought, well, maybe you were working on your mimeograph or your ditto machine.
That's right.
And
That's right.
What? Honestly, I mean, I don't want to think that I'm getting that old either. But my gosh, when I started teaching, yes, we used a ditto machine. So,
and they smelled good. Everybody loved those.
Yeah, it was great,
It's
And they were so cool, to the touch, and it was just great. So
nice to know when your teacher wasn't prepared ahead of class. It was
or as kids too, everyone wanted to be the kid to put the film in the reel, from the reel into the projector.
Or turn the film strip to the beep.
With the film strip, you got to be the one to push the button.
Yeah.
Advanced slide. Yeah, it was great.
Okay, enjoy the rest of your evening.
You too. Nice talking to you, Scott.
You bet. Bye.
Bye.